Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the P-LotPodcast. John here, joined once again by the main man himself, Michael Angelillo. Michael, how we doing, man? Ready for football? I can tell you're
Listen,
rocking
I
your
was
bird
at the
hat.
game. I was at the Phillies game yesterday. Nick Sirianni was at the Phillies game yesterday. I'm still take my time. I'm enjoying the celebration before I got to start stressing out again. So yeah, just enjoying what's
Yeah,
currently
this is like
happening.
this is like our last month of not having to worry about football until training camp begins at the end of the month.
Yeah, but today we have some free agency moves to talk about from the NHL and the NBA, but more specifically the Sixers and the Flyers. We
I mean,
have
we can maybe talk about some of the big
some
news
of the
that
bigger moves, sure,
talk
sure.
about how Shams Charania was talking about this being like the biggest offseason in potentially in NBA history in terms of movement. And I don't know, dude. I don't really. I mean, obviously, there's been names being moved, but I wouldn't call it the. I wouldn't say it was the same impact as when the Heat formed their super team about 15 years ago. I wouldn't go with
Yeah,
that.
or like Durant moving teams. Still, it's actually a pretty big thing, but it's no Durant to Golden State. That sort of
Well,
thing.
yeah, exactly, and like the Miles Turner signing with the Bucks and the Bucks cutting a crippled
Dude, that
Dame.
was pretty. Honestly, all right. Let's just start with the NBA then, because if we have Miles Turner going to the Bucks, like, if I was a Pacer fan, I would be so pissed and like upset and like everything else because Miles Turner, longest tenured pacer for this era. Every year felt like, oh, he could be traded this year, and he just was still here, still here. You finally break through, you get to the finals, the whole thing. He has a bad finals. Like, there's no way around it. He struggled in the NBA finals. He had a few games here or there where he was helping defensively and whatnot, but scoring wise, he was really bad. He shot poorly, all that sort of stuff. And then you up and leave for like a
A
rival, a
rival.
legitimate rival. Like it's just I it's hard to kind of put into words. It would have been like if Nola went to the Braves. It would have been like if when Reese hit free agency after the struggling World Series dips out to like, you
The
know,
Mets.
the Mets. I'd be really beside myself to be honest with you. And now I got to see him with Giannis and Milwaukee and how much I would hate the Bucks as a Pacer fan, and I got to just deal with that. Like super frustrating for sure. Definitely one of the bigger moves I think that took place. I think one of the more surprising moves too. I did not expect that, but we alluded to it earlier. Kevin Durant getting traded to the Houston Rockets, which I thought was a great move for Houston. You get off Jalen Green, you get off Dylan Brooks, and some draft capital for what was their biggest issue. Their biggest issue was consistent scoring. And I get it. Kevin Durant is not the Kevin Durant of years before. However, he still can get his buckets when he needs to and will definitely immensely help their offensive line.
Bro, it does feel like I don't know, man. Like the Rockets, though, are kind of like the Tennessee Titans of the of the NBA, where it's like if you're an old player that's like right near the end of his career, you finish your career with like the
With Houston.
with Houston, like with Barkley and like
Yeah. I mean they got some other guys too. They signed Dorian Finney Smith. They also brought in Clint Capella. They kept Fred Van Vliet. Like the roster is extremely deep that they have a lot of ways to beat kind of everybody and
God, man. Well,
now
think about that. Well, the storyline there is going to be like,
cheating.
look, the Thunder are going to look to repeat. They just gave Shy like the supermax,
Hmm.
and they know. And if you're the Thunder, you know you can't keep this team together long term because of the NBA's dumbass rule.
CBA.
We'll just call it this. We'll call it the Warrior rule. Let's just call it that
Sure.
because that's why they did it.
Which was so dumb to begin with, by
right?
the way, because
Right.
it was so
They did
like
it.
it
So
was one player
now
they brought in from
I
free
would,
agency.
Michael, I would venture to say, that because I don't know what LeBron's going to be like next year, like with the Lakers.
I mean, if he even officially stays, that's not a guarantee because the Lakers signing DeAndre Ayton, who I know Laker fans are going to loathe. They are in a mode
Greatest
of
centers have ever played for basically the greatest centers of all time. At some point, feel like they have played for the Lakers at some point in their career, like Wilt and Shaq, Kareem.
not DeAndre Ayton, though, that's for sure.
Willing to throw Dwight Howard in there. He's a Hall of Famer, I think. The
He's
DeAndre
absolutely a
Ayton.
Hall of Famer. I mean, Anthony Davis, not a center, but it's just they usually get really good bigs. But yeah, like the Lakers are really doing a lot to clear off their books long term. Like they have a ton of expiring contracts this offseason, including Luka Doncic, who I'm sure they are going to extend, but it seems like this year they're honestly looking at it as like a not do anything year,
Yeah,
clear
but
off as
without
much
the
as we can
Lakers are
get.
going to have new ownership. I wonder
I
if
think they want to
Luka.
wait for a clean slate where it's like, okay, we're going to extend Luca, and then we're essentially going to have nothing else, and it's going to be time to build out a team from there. So it'll be interesting if because LeBron, I think LeBron opting into his contract very rare. Usually he signs the 2 year deal with the second year being a player option. He usually opts out and then signs a new 2 year deal with the second one being a player option. He's done that essentially every year since going back to Cleveland. Um, and the fact that he opted in this year makes me think there's a decent chance it's the last year of his career. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I could imagine he wants his farewell tour, so I think it'd be a little more announced. Maybe he'll wait until later in the summer to announce it. I don't know. But he wants to have at least, I think, one more shot at a legitimate championship. And obviously playing with Luca helps, but everything else the Lakers have to offer at the moment is not remotely championship caliber. So I don't think they are poised to be in a position to actually win something for this upcoming year.
I agree. Going back to the Sixers, though. Obviously, the opt-ins were no surprise. Drummond and Kelly Oubre, the Sixers' two big expiring contracts, two guys that I mean, Drummond right now is the third center. Let's bone it.
Drummond, I'd like to get off the team as soon as
Right.
possible.
Kelly Oubre obviously has a bigger role than Drummond, but
He's
you
a
know,
fine player. That's all.
he's like your seventh, eighth guy in your rotation on a good team, right? At the Sixers plant and with all the Sixers with renewed health. Yeah, like that. Yeah, like I don't think he's going to be someone they're going to actively like not play. But when it comes to the trade deadline, you know, 6-7 months from now, is he someone they're going to have to move to make salaries match? Like he's probably the guy with Drummond, right? So
definitely.
so
Yeah.
he's opted in.
Yeah. And then the big, I guess, non-moves or moves that haven't, whatever. Gershon Yabusele ended up signing the mid-level exception with the New York Knicks, which that blows. I got to be honest. I was honestly shocked. I didn't think the Knicks were connected to him at all. I kept
But
seeing,
dude, he feels like the typical Nick player.
sure, I kept seeing the Spurs. I kept seeing all these teams in the West, the Nuggets. Um, and then he signed with the Knicks. That was kind of a shock. And the truth is that what the Sixers could have offered him, and on the low end even, was only going to be like 200,000 less a year. And I think for that difference, he would have stayed. The issue is the Sixers have been kind of, I guess, messing around a little bit with the Quentin Grimes contract, like not getting that done as soon as possible has kind of screwed them in that department because they definitely wanted to keep both, but I think they definitely wanted to sign Grimes first and then know exactly how much left over they had to be able to offer to Yabusele. And I can't get mad at him for not wanting to wait around for potentially the Knicks to sign other players, and now his options are a lot less or a lot more limited. And if he wants to return to the Sixers, that's great, but he might get less than what he could have wanted at all. So you take a little bit of more money than you probably could have gotten, and you also don't have to wait and hope that things don't fill up or go poorly. I understand that. I can't really get mad at him for that. If they sign Quentin Grimes on like the first day of free agency, the Sixers, I don't think this happens. Like I think Yabusele stays, but the fact that they couldn't get it done and they still haven't gotten it done, but I
Well,
do still think they do.
well,
I
yeah,
think
Grimes is a
he's the
restricted
reason why he's
free
gone.
agent, so they could. I think it's like they almost want him to sign an offer sheet, and
Sure.
then they'll just match it right away,
Hmm.
or or if it's something ridiculous like 28 million a year, like you're not going to match that. That's absurd. 25 to 28 million is kind of absurd for Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, I do think he gets, I think, around ish 20. Um, but the Sixers did sign someone that is a similar, not, I shouldn't say play style, but it's a bit of a Yabusele replacement. Trendon Watford, 24-year-old forward who I would consider Yabusele, like he's definitely a 4-5. I would call Watford more of a 3-4 type of player. Was in Portland for the first 2 years of his career, and then was in Brooklyn these last two seasons. Last year, averaged 10 points a game, shot um, 33% from three. He's like 1 year removed from 40% from three. Not many attempts, but good twitchy defender. Has a much better handle than Yabusele for sure. Definitely a little more athletic, but less physical. Like Yabu, we had essentially playing the center role for a while there when Embiid was down and stuff, and he was actually pretty good as a backup five, stretch five. Watford's not going to be doing that, but he is a pretty decent fit for what they need, and he's also happens to be like childhood best friends with Tyrese Maxey, so he said that played a big role in him wanting to come here and play with Maxey.
Do you think? Obviously, I think the Sixers are done. They may obviously they'll when it comes to
With
Quentin Grimes
Grimes, and that's it. Yeah,
resolution, but I think what is on the roster right now is probably going to be what you start the season with, except maybe like a minor trade or
maybe. Yeah, I mean
because
they
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 seem to
did
be the Sixers to me like they do not want to move off of McCain. They do not want to move off of Grimes unless
Maxey.
you get some obviously Maxi. They just drafted Edgecombe. You know, you
They're
have
making a very conscious effort to get younger, an extremely conscious effort to be a younger team moving forward. They have a lot of guys that are 25 and younger, and really are in that like 20 to 22-year-old range. Um, besides George, Embiid, Oubre, and like the other old veterans like Drummond and Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry, I guess is still here. Like besides those guys, everyone else is very, very young. And we talked about this a little bit last podcast that the post Embiid Sixers was a lot more dire looking. I would say even just a handful of months ago, even a year ago, compared to what it looks like now. Not saying it's like the brightest future in the world, but they're Morey is doing, I think, honestly, a pretty good job at building a youthful foundation of guys that by the time it is the end of this Embiid era, you're going to have a bunch of guys kind of still entering their age prime or in their age prime that are competent enough and good enough pieces to be a contending team if a couple ascend into stardom or you go and acquire or draft some more superstars along the way. By the time Embiid's gone, it's not going to be like process 2.0. We're going to suck for the next 5 years. Like I think there's certainly more of a light at the end of this era of Sixers basketball.
well, yeah.
And
I mean the
it's moving
complaint. I
forward
think
on
I
this
think a
too.
lot of the fans' complaints, which were valid, were the like we would have a young player on the team who would never get consistent minutes, and then we would just let him go for close to nothing.
Yeah, I think they've learned on top of the future building that it's like, if you want to make it through an entire regular season with your stars being healthy as possible, especially ones that are injury prone, you need youth. Like the answer to keeping Joel Embiid healthy isn't going to be, while also like being competitive too, isn't going to be playing, although not super old, but very washed, is not playing like Andre Drummond like 30 minutes a game. Like that is not the solution. Or if you want to give Maxi a day, it's not sticking out 41-year-old Kyle Lowry for 25 minutes a night. Like that's just not going to work because those guys are going to be older and break down too, and they're not going to be as effective. So when you just can have all these young players that you just throw out there, Justin Edwards, VJ Edgecombe, Jared McCain, Quentin Grimes, and all these guys that can just defend a lot of guard positions, defend the perimeter, they can knock down threes and stuff. I mean, that's how you survive in today's NBA in a long season. And then you just need your guys to be healthy and come through when the springtime rolls around. So I think they've gone a pretty good way about it. They're into some other guys for vet minimums out there, like Chris Bouchard, former Raptor, if we remember from that 2022 series. And yeah, so I think that honestly, nothing matters if Embiid's not healthy, of course. But I will say that I'm maybe about as positive on the Sixers as I could possibly be with the very strong possibility of Embiid's health being an issue again. Where if I really twist in my mind that he is going to be healthy, I really do think they have a team around it that is very, very good. And combine that with the fact that the East is going to be wide open with the other injuries among the conference, that I have to say it's about as positive as I could feel about the Sixers at this moment.
Yeah, and summer league has started, and the Sixers play tonight.
They play tonight. Yeah, it's the game's like at like 10, but I'm excited, man. You're gonna be
Oh yeah, I
seeing.
want to see I want to see Justin out. Like, you want to see Justin
People are
out.
saying that this might be the best summer league team ever. Especially if McCain was healthy and playing, it'd be
Well,
ridiculous.
dude, you remember when Maxi first started playing summer league? We were like, oh my god, like maybe he's gonna, play regular minutes. And he's like the only young player I ever seen Doc Rivers ever consistently play.
Well, that's just because he also hated Ben, so it made it easier for him. Like even his rookie year when Ben was starting in like 21, he was still using Maxi because he was just anti Ben. So
Anti Ben.
yeah.
Well, that actually funny you bring him up. So, Michael, I've seen this Ben's name thrown around as like, okay, who's going to be the Sixers power forward? Because the Sixers don't have a power forward technically, unless you want
Yeah,
to
they
play
might
Carl.
just run a little small. Like it might just be like George or
I think
Watford.
they're like small ball, but just
Listen,
kind of like water cooler talk. I've seen Ben's name thrown around. Michael, I don't think that's a good idea.
if he wasn't actually like Danny Green was recently on Matt Barnes's podcast and gave a pretty candid opinion that you don't really get um, when talking about certain situations. Talking about the 2021 Sixers that lost to the Hawks, made a real good point. Talking about that series, what went wrong. He talked about himself, his own calf injury really hurt the series. And like we remember that Danny Green getting hurt in that series sucked. That really, he was doing a really good job on Trae Young when it wasn't, Ben, all that sort of stuff. And then he was talking about Ben, and he said, like, listen, that was a big reason why I wanted to come there and wanted to stay was Ben Simmons playing with Ben. He's like, I played with Ben. I averaged the most 3-point attempts in my career that year, and I also shot really well that year. Ben, it's such a frustrating thing because Ben was legitimately a piece and reason as to why people wanted to play here. LeBron almost came here in 2018 to play with Joel and Ben Simmons. Like, word from his mouth, that is what he wanted to do potentially. It's kind of like what was going on with Carson when guys wanted to come here to play with Carson. But anyways, he said, definitely a mental thing with him, of course, as we all know, but it did eventually turn into a physical issue. It did eventually turn into serious, legitimate back injuries that certainly hamstrung his athleticism and that made him worse. That made him a lot worse. Like, he was here not playing essentially and just like sitting out until we traded for Harden. And I think people forget when he did first get to Brooklyn, there were flashes where it was like, listen, he's not shooting like at all, but he's still coast to coast flying, playing really good D. And then the back injuries started popping up and he lost that. So, all this to say, if Ben wasn't physically not as well as he used to be, I would honestly take him in a heartbeat. I think the mental stuff is behind him now to an extent. Like he's open to a reunion. I think he realizes in hindsight how much he enjoyed it here and how much the fans like appreciated him even
Yeah, but
with
how much of do you think
issues.
of this? Do you think his back injuries and his health issues may have been caused because he's clearly someone who suffer, not that I'm like a doctor or anything, but he definitely has like anxiety problems. Like you can't
He's
not
got
say
confidence issues. Yeah, all that
like he
sort of
doesn't
stuff.
have any kind of anxiety. Like you saw how he was in that Hawks series. You kind
Hmm.
of saw like his, I would say, his relationship, I think, with the media, I would say. He was obviously someone who was very cognizant of what people said to him. When you look at someone like Joel, who like people say the nastiest things about him. Does it bother him to a certain extent? Yes, but I think that's more of a motivational thing where Ben couldn't use it as motivation. He couldn't.
He let it keep him down. He never wanted to prove them wrong. His method of like proving them wrong is like, I'm gonna put up like 17 points and like 14 assists, and I'm also not gonna shoot a jumper, but F you, I'm doing that. He needed to use it to been like, listen, I'm gonna knock down like 35% of my threes on like 2 attempts all season. I would have been overjoyed if that's what I got. And it's such a shame because he has those clips of him hitting the threes, and it's like, dude, I know you as a human being are talented enough to make threes at this clip. You just need to keep shooting them. I don't care how many times you shoot 0 for 9 from three if you're shooting them. Like honestly,
Yeah, like in
that's
a game where you're
wrong.
up like 25 against the Hornets, it's like if you're
Well, yeah,
gonna
and he
shoot
shoots that
threes,
corner three.
like
Like,
shoot threes because it's like
no,
it's
yeah.
not it's you're not going to be like we
Regardless,
lost the game because Ben started shooting threes.
no, I can't open up the Ben Band-Aid at the moment. But if he was more healthy, I'd be more interested in a reunion. However, I do think physically he's unwell, so I don't. Yeah,
Right.
I'll probably pass.
I right. Let's move over to the Flyers, Michael. So this NHL free agency in general was just
Honestly, pretty interesting. Some interesting moves, I think. Like,
you mean like Marner
yeah, like Marner
secretly
to
negotiating
Vegas.
like kind of with the Knights while he was still on the Blues and him yelling at his teammates and then he couldn't wait to leave.
Yeah, and like Marchand going to staying in Florida on a 6-year deal at age 37. Really,
And
Mark.
yeah, that's not going to backfire at all.
I mean, it's really something. But the Panthers keeping their core together. Um, the Flyers, some moves, definitely some interesting moves. Maybe some not so great moves. I don't know,
Let's Can we
but
just talk about the Panthers and then we'll just jump to the
okay,
Flyers there real quick.
sure.
Though, are you a little annoyed at the no state income tax? Everyone just says that, and it's like because you saw Paul Bissonnette brought it up to Bettman, and Bettman literally had a meltdown when asked about it, which
Yeah,
is really uncharacteristic of a commissioner to sort of act like that. Because now you're only just adding more fuel to the fire.
I mean, I think it was just an issue because the cap wasn't going up. Like that's the only reason it became a talking point and why it was never a talking point before. It's because the cap was like stagnant and only increasing by like 2 million a year for a 4-year stretch there. So yeah, players were just going to no state income tax teams to maximize their profits cuz teams weren't throwing out as much money, and the league wasn't getting as much money as the new CBA that goes into effect next year, which pretty wild stuff, like 84 game season. The cap's going to go up pretty substantially. But the income tax thing, I don't think was as big of a deal. What was a big deal and actually was um, addressed in the new CBA is the long-term IR glitch. Honestly, it feels like something straight out of a video game. The way you kind of cheat the system, where you take your veteran player who makes like $8 million, $9 million, maybe even more $1 million a year, and they're a little banged up, and it's like, you know what? I know we're good enough. I know he's good enough that he doesn't need to ramp up or whatever. We're throwing your ass on the long-term IR. So essentially that money disappears. That money is gone off the books until you can just bring them back come postseason start time. I mean, it's what the Golden Knights did the last couple years. That's why a lot of people were mad at the Maple Leafs for not doing it with Austin Matthews and going out and getting some more players. They had Matthews just kind of battle through injuries all season. But it's something Vegas abused a lot. I'm sure it's something. It's something that that also not great teams. Oh yeah, Jesus, the biggest one, the Lightning were doing it with Nikita Kucherov, and even the Panthers did it with Kachuk and Ekblad this year. So like, you're getting these great teams that are just getting a lot better players while having their stars
They're
on the shelf.
circumventing the salary cap.
Yes, essentially. Like, it's the Flyers equivalent to this would be, let's say they're really good next year, and it's like, all right, we're just going to throw Coots on the long-term IR, and we're going to go trade for a $9 million a year player that's actually really, really
And then
good.
activate Coots
And then
game
Coots will
before
come back
game
for the
one.
playoffs. Yeah, exactly. So they got rid of that, which obviously, what the hell? Like, honestly, that's insane to me, because I think
That's way worse than what the Eagles did.
well, I will say the origins of the long-term IR are what Ryan Ellis is doing, as Ryan Ellis is still collecting a paycheck from the Flyers, where he has no intentions of coming back. He is going to retire as soon as that check dries up from the Flyers, and he's going to be done. So him just straight up not playing hockey anymore, that's what the long-term IR was originally for. The Flyers don't have to kill themselves on the payroll because Ryan Ellis is just sitting there. It started getting abused by these good teams because they're like, listen, well, why not? If we activate him before the playoffs and it doesn't really change our contract situation, it might as well. Like, who cares? And teams have won Stanley Cups off of this strategy and gone on deep playoff runs off this strategy. So definitely something the NHL needs to get out of the league. Like, imagine when Bryce was getting hurt those last couple years, that all of a sudden it subtracts so much money from the payroll, where it's like, oh, listen, that doesn't even count against the payroll anymore. Mr. Middleton, we're going to open up and throw a trade out here for some $25 million a year player because Bryce isn't playing for the next couple months, like that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely something that's good that they're getting out of the game, and it'll be interesting to see how some of those teams that just kind of have been using it go from there. Like, when there is an injury to their star player and they want to just throw them on the shelf, they won't be able to replenish it with some equal value player.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's like, yeah, I think the NHL right now wants to bring a little more parity back because we're having like nonstop dynasties. I feel like in the NHL, like it's like dynasty after dynasty after dynasty, and I think they want to, the NBA gets ripped. People complain it's always the same teams, but we've had a different NBA champion like for how many years in a row? Seven
That's a
years in a
lot.
row?
Yeah.
8 years in a row? So that's parity. That
Maybe
that is
forced,
parity.
but it is parity.
It's for
It's
forced.
forced.
It
It's
is forced.
forced.
I think with this though, it's more or less like, you know, first off, like not every player is going to run to play for a Florida team because A, the roster spots are limited, and B, you have a salary cap, right?
Right.
Like the idea, like, oh, everyone's going to want to play for the Golden Knights. Like, Marner wants to play for the Knights because he's friends with guys on the team, and they're offering him a ton of money. It's not like Marner's going to play for the Knights for $8 million a year when the Maple Leafs offered him 14. It's like,
I will say that the reason I think that we always have hockey dynasties is just we talk about it all the time. It's the nature of hockey players that it's like hockey players feel like guys that don't love change too much. They don't want to go run somewhere else. Like we know hockey money is not nearly as much as the other sports money, so it's like, oh, he left to go play on a worse team because he got an extra 2.5 million a year, which raises his salary from like 10 million to 12 million, like that sort of thing. Where in other sports, it's like, all right, if this NBA player wants to stay, he's got to take a 30 million a year pay cut to stay with, you know, the Oklahoma City Thunder in a couple years, like that sort of thing. Jalen Williams or whatever, he's going to be offered the max, super max from the Thunder, but he could, like you get my point. So all that sort of stuff is like why I think all the Panthers guys are staying. Sam Bennett probably could have got a pretty solid overpay from a lot of teams in the
man,
offseason.
I don't know. He got $8 million a year, dude, and he's the
Dude,
most
he might have
point
got like 9.5, 10. He just won the Conn Smythe. You know,
from who? What, like the
anybody.
Sharks?
Dude, it could have been the stupid Flyers for all we know. Like it just there is I think more possibility in other sports to leave and go get more money that is a lot more common than what you see in the NHL. You just don't see it as much. And I think
Yeah,
that's
maybe the Preds,
the nature of it all.
maybe the Preds would have given him 10 million a year. You're right, Michael. Maybe the Preds would have given him 10 because they drafted Brady Barton over Martone and
That's
Higgins.
why, yeah, exactly. That's why
Okay.
this McDavid situation is a very, very big one where it could really change the scope of, or the scape, I guess, of hockey. Where if he decides to leave and
I
go
think he's
somewhere
leaving.
else, if he does, I think that that could open the door for a lot of guys being like, you know what, maybe leaving isn't so bad. Look how much money McDavid's going to get from the Flyers, from the Blackhawks,
Well,
from
Michael,
wherever.
I looked into McDavid's background because I was like, all right, what's like the Flyers' odds of getting McDavid? And oh man, so McDavid's dad is a huge Boston Bruins fan, and the Boston Bruins, Michael, have been like gutting their roster.
I see.
And if you're gutting your roster and you're trying to be bad for a
I
team
see.
that's been very good for like 15 years,
Dude, for like ever.
for yeah, forever. If you told a Bruins fan you're going to have to sit through two shit seasons, but you get
Your
McDavid,
prize is McDavid.
the prize is McDavid. I think they would take that as opposed to like getting bounced in the second round by like the Panthers.
Yeah. So interesting. I did see someone like some funny just hockey potential change in the CBA that it was like, F it. We need more teams. I'm sick of the winning teams being, oh, who has the best third line? It's not about who has the best players on it. It's like who's got the deeper team. Oh, this team is
What a
the
horrible
Panthers.
take.
It was funny because it was like, oh, the Panthers are winning because they essentially have second liners on their third line. And it's like, okay, congrats. You have a better third line than the Oilers. Um, so it's like, let's get more teams out there. So the teams with the real stars are winning. And it'll, you'll
What,
get
at
more
college?
like, similar to a lot of other sports,
Hockey
honestly.
has 32 teams.
Yeah, they want more.
The argument's like they have too many teams. Like maybe that's the argument.
They want more. They want depth to matter less. It
What?
was interesting. There was like a
So,
chaotic good
so
or chaotic
some
evil.
dude snorted a couple lines, picked up his phone, and was like, "We need more teams. Give me teams in like Norfolk, Virginia. Give me a team in
Yeah, yeah,
Saskatchewan. Give me a
yeah.
team in Montana."
And
And
then the Stars will be the only, like, the
yeah,
teams
but
with the
they play
best
like
players.
yeah, but like
Dude,
okay,
that'll
dude.
set up good for us, man. Michkov, come on, man.
So
We don't got
whatever,
to worry about Noah Cates anymore.
whatever. Let's just talk about the Flyers real
Noah
quick.
Cates is going to be paid to be a first liner on the Norfolk, Gophers or
Norfolk,
something.
uh, Norfolk,
Ice Otters.
ice, the icy confines of Norfolk, Virginia,
Exactly.
bro. So I sent you this tweet the other day about. Well, then we'll go in the Flyers free agent overpays. I mean moves. Um,
Mm.
Bro, did your blood boil when you saw that Michkov's the teammate he spent the second most ice time with this year was
Oh,
Ollie Likesell?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, not really much to say about that. That's just
You know
worse,
what the equivalent to that is, Michael? This is the equivalent of how bad Tortorella was with Michkov surrounding with players. Imagine if Embiid never got hurt those first 2 years he was drafted on the process era Sixers. And for some reason, Brett Brown only played him like 20 minutes a game when he clearly could be playing more and was
Right.
playing him with like um, Hollis Thompson, Jakar Sampson, like literal
Just
like
like
the
not playing him with like Iguodala, for example, and
yes,
not playing him with like
or
True
with like Drew
Holiday.
Holiday
Yeah,
or Hawes or
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
Evan
Like
Turner.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, he had Michkov just on like the third line essentially all season, and it's like, I don't know. I
He
don't
was
know.
yeah, exactly. It's why
The best player on the
he
team. Like, I
is
don't know.
never allowed to be a head coach ever again.
Right. So hopefully that gets better. But the Flyers did make some moves. Before we get into maybe I guess the worst one, they got a couple goaltenders, um, and not a couple goaltenders. They got a backup goaltender with Dan
Dan
Vlader.
Vladar,
Vladar. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Dan Vladar. People were calling him Darth Vladar because his name
Yeah,
almost looks like Darth Vader.
the backup
He's the
goalie.
guy that lost his starting job to Wolf from the Calgary Flames. That's
Backup goalie for the Flames that was actually pretty good 5-on-5, but was super bad on the penalty kill. And that just kind of tanked his stats, which his stats like aren't terrible. So to think that the penalty kill was so terrible that he could have actually have really nice stats. Essentially, though, just getting a veteran goalie that still isn't amazing, but your goalie tandem, I don't know. It's just hoping to get a little more
well,
stability
realistically,
there.
dude. So this is where I think some people were like, uh, Danny, like, why are we overpaying? So like Alex Leone,
Lion. That's
Lyon,
former
excuse me,
Flyer Alex Lyon. Yeah,
signed with on a much more like on a cheaper contract where Lyon
definitely better.
is definitely better, and he would have been the Flyers starting goalie on a really cheap contract. So even if you get competitive, let's say you upgrade the blue line a little bit, like realistically, 5 years from now, we have absolutely no clue who are still going to be the elite to good goalies in the NHL. But like the Oilers, the last 2 years almost won a Stanley Cup with Jeff Skinner as their goalie,
Stuart Skinner
or Stuart Skinner, excuse me.
in the winger. No, for sure. And listen, perhaps he's the reason that they lost 2 Stanley Cups in a row as well. Like you got there in spite of him more so, and he couldn't get the job done. So I don't know. I would have liked a better stopgap goalie for sure. I want to get a better gauge of what we have, and
What if this? I mean, the Flyers are a very deep analytical team, and I'm assuming when they brought in Tocchet, because Tocchet seems to be really hung up on like resources and having things at his disposal. One of them, I would assume, would be analytics.
sure, I hope.
I would hope, and I don't know, like for some reason, is this like an analytical like acquisition where it's like, oh, he comes to the Flyers, they know it's sort of like with Caleb Cotham with the Phillies, they just like know what they can fix and make them better. Like I don't know. Like at
I
the
don't
end of
know.
it,
I
like at
hope.
the
I
end of
don't
the
know.
like at the end of the day, it's like me stop puck when you're a goalie. Like I
Yeah.
hate to say it like that, but
It's yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, that was a little questionable. They signed a couple defensemen to pretty much nothing contracts. Some depth defensive Noah Yulson and
yeah,
Dennis Gilbert. Nothing
those
really.
those sort of feel like we need our young players who like the Oliver Bonks of the world to like compete against someone in camp that's like
Yeah, and let's get some vets in there for
that's
sure.
like played in the NHL.
Yeah, and then the definitely the biggest overpay. I guess because it's only a 1 year deal, maybe it doesn't. It's not the end of the world, but I definitely don't love the signing. Christian Dvorak, 1 year, $5.4 million. Definitely a lot of money for what is just like a third to fourth line center who is going to play on the penalty kill. That he's good at faceoffs. That we know for sure. His faceoff percentage is always in like 55%, which average most guys are around like 50. So when you're above that, it's pretty good. Um, but it's just it's not very exciting otherwise. And it
It
is a
definitely feels like
pretty
they
big
signed
chunk of check.
Dvorak. They signed Dvorak with the intention of moving him at the deadline if
Mm-hmm.
they're not competitive this year because they
Mm-hmm.
saw what they got for Lawton. And I know this is Danny Briere maybe getting a little too cute, like where he's like, oh well, Lots had an affordable was had years on his contract. I got the Leafs to fork over like
Mm-hmm.
their last first round pick because if you look at the Leafs, they have first round picks for like the next three drafts,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously you don't want to keep trading your first if you just keep running out of them.
Yeah, so
Especially
maybe
when the guy's Scott Lawton. No offense to Lots, but like, come on, that seemed like a little. That's pretty bad GMing, but
yeah, maybe Dvorak is gonna get you a first round pick at the deadline.
or I don't know, maybe like second rounders. Speaking of the second round, we did the podcast before the day two of the NHL draft. What did you think of the Flyers day two?
I mean, listen, they drafted a lot of guys that I think were pretty high on consensus big boards. They drafted a lot of size. They definitely want to get bigger. And I think that I don't know, like it seems as though the consensus Flyers opinion is that every pick besides Nesbitt was pretty dang good, and some of which were like amazing.
Like Carter
So
D'Amico is a big one.
yeah. There's a lot of them. So yeah, I'm again the Flyers under Danny Briere. They seem to definitely be going in a positive direction, but sometimes it's a little bit of a salsa of like a couple steps forward and then we got to take one step back or maybe two steps back sometimes, but then we run forward for a little bit again. So it feels like he's a bit of a roller coaster up and
Yeah, if they
down.
signed Alex Lyon, I would have been excited from like the oh wow, that's really good value, and like because the Vladar contract's a 2 year contract, right?
Yeah, I don't like I guess they're hoping that
Like,
like
like it just seems
Bjornsson.
so dumb if like let's say next year they get into the McDavid sweepstakes and they're like, oh, we're gonna Cal Peterson Vladar, like we're gonna send him to Lehigh Valley because he'll be off our salary cap.
Yeah, I mean they're they have in the pipeline Carson Bjarnason.
They also have like the
Um,
top goalie in the KHL in their system as well.
right. So like Bjarnsson's the guy um, that I think you know that's a guy to get excited about. 20-year-old goalie that maybe in 2 years will be ready to get his stab at the NHL. He's talking to me really wants to be in Lehigh Valley. So um, things to look forward to. But
Right. Let's move over to the Phillies. So um hmm I mean, listen, man, they're a 90 to 95 win team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
so listen, like they're gonna win games. Like them taking 2 or 3 from the Padres or this week, that's big. I think the Padres are a really good team.
John, they're beating good baseball teams. Like they are, you know? They're playing pretty good baseball and they're beating good baseball teams and it's pushed by their starting pitching. There's just, like it's I think it's pretty simple. 2 or 3 from San Diego is huge. They are in their own way a little bit. It looks like they need something to get Fernando Tatis a little excited because he doesn't seem too happy at the moment. Um,
Well, I was so Wednesday, obviously doubleheader. We went out after work to go watch the second game, and the Padres literally looked like in that second game, Michael, they just wanted to go home. Like
yeah,
The Sanchez had a
pretty dominant performance.
yeah, they had like a 5 pitch first inning, and they're swinging everything out of the zone and hitting it into the ground. Like they just didn't want to be there,
Yeah,
and
he was on complete game watch until Rat Jose Iglesias had that 10 pitch at bat in the seventh or whatever that
yeah,
totally tanked
he
it.
looked like Sanchez looked like he was about to throw a Maddox
Yeah,
at some
totally.
point,
And
and
then the
yeah,
Phillies had a long bottom of the seventh that I think they were like, all right, let's just get him out. But listen, the starting pitching, Wheeler, Sanchez, and Suarez have been pretty much impeccable, like all year. Really, this is pretty simple about it.
pretty much
Uh,
when Ranger got healthy or got in shape and
he had
was
his one
healthy.
start where it was essentially like a spring training start, and after that, he's been unbelievable. Obviously, Wheeler's Wheeler, and we're getting to a point where obviously Sanchez is Sanchez. Like this is just what he does. He goes out there and he shoves pretty much all the time now. There's, I guess, concern you could call it with the other 2 rotational spots at the moment. Obviously, they sent down McAble, they optioned him, and called up Seth Johnson. They're going to give Taiwan
I
that
think
start.
McAble getting sent down is the right move because he does
Yeah,
look totally overmatched on the bump right now.
his
And
command is just off. It's simple as that. Like I think it looked like he might have been tipping a little bit before, which was leading him to get hit, and then the command, like those first 2 innings against San Diego, pretty dang good. And then all of a sudden, with 2 outs in the third or 2 outs in the second, whatever it was, he thought he had the check swing strike 3. He didn't. And from then on, it was like a meltdown. Immediate walk of the 9 hitter, and he's just walking a bunch of guys. Ended up with 5 freaking walks. And that was what his issues stemmed from last season in AAA. It was, we were pretty much, I think collectively as a fan base, I think everyone was pretty much out on McAble after last year of how much he struggled, and this year really was a nice stepping stone for him. But the command issues definitely reared its ugly head, and I think sending him down to work on that is definitely a good thing. And especially if you get him pitching well again, definitely a potential trade chip. But Taiwan's going to make that start on Tuesday, and then they'll have one more start to make in that position before the All-Star break, which it might be Taiwan again. Nola, who knows? I think my guess is he'll be back by the beginning of August. And then that leaves us with Jesus Luzardo, who I think is in need of an IL stint, is in need of a bit of a break. I guess, probably wasn't the best that early in the season. His great starts was getting pushed a little bit to over triple digit pitches a few times. He's thrown a few starts ago. He already eclipsed his innings from last season because of the injuries. So I think there's definitely a bit of a fatigue that's hitting him. Not that, again, his stuff is taking a little bit of a hit. His fastball velocity is down just a tick, but it's also the command is not good.
Well,
He's
he's
not,
also just does not pitch well during the day.
which is weird, and I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do about that.
Well,
Days just roll around.
technically, well,
Like,
technically, in a day game, um, I don't know, like it's warmer, so guys, some hitters prefer warmer because the ball tends to travel more. I'm not sure how heat affects these dead balls. Are they dead balls? Or are they going back to the material they used before they juice the balls?
they're they're dead. I don't know. They're dead. Look, we
It
can get
looked
into
like it was dead
conspiracies. I
yesterday.
think Luzardo. It's just like, I mean, the ball was getting rocketed. I will say. It's his commands off. Like he was getting ahead in counts, and he wasn't getting any chases with his breaking ball because they were pretty non-competitive. And then he's like forced to kind of groove a fastball with two
Yeah,
strikes.
I think him going on the IL would be good just to give him a break because
I
he's
think they're
been
gonna do
banged
that.
up the last couple of years. This is the most he's thrown up until this point in a few seasons now. So,
Well,
and listen, like,
2023 was his only full year, and it's
and
the year
look,
the
he is
Marlins
like the
made the
Phillies
playoffs.
fifth. And look, realistically, entering this year, he was the fifth starter. So, like, we kind of anticipated like the first month of the season, he looked like it was. It reminded me a little bit of when Vince Velasquez his first month as a Philly, where he just looked so dominant.
Was
And then
Vinny ever that good?
do
He's
you forget Vinny had that 16K shutout?
Yeah, that was I remember
He
that.
looked so good his first month, and then that's when Clintack. It was reported the Phillies were looking to shop him, and everybody flipped out.
Yeah, Vinny Velo that only could throw like his Vinny Velo was like 95, 96 maybe. Crazy how much that's changed. But yeah, like early in the season was looking dominant. I do think he's reached some dead arm. And I guess that, you know, he could use an IL stint once Aaron gets back for sure. I think when Nola gets back, you can put him on the shelf, and after you put him on the shelf, just get him back, and like it's making it a lot easier. Where you kind of like he's kind of answering your question of which starters are you going to move to the bullpen, and it feels like if his arm's going to be kind of shot, or at least lengthwise, it makes sense that it's him. You know, what did we see from him yesterday? One really, really good inning, one inning where he got in a little bit of a trouble and he should have got out of it, but JT kind of threw it away, bad throw. But ultimately it was like fine. And then the roof caved in, and he could not throw strikes. He was walking a bunch of guys, and when he threw strikes, he was just kind of grooving fastballs and they were getting smoked. And it's like, maybe come playoff time, him as a 2 inning reliever, that's going to be awesome coming out of the bullpen. That's some pretty nasty stuff coming out of the pen. Um, and they're going to have a lot of questions to answer. Health is going to matter a lot for those decisions, and obviously the deadline will help answer some of those decisions too. But I think for now, his starts should be, I think, a little more limited in Rob's mind. Like, listen, man, we just want you to get through like 5 strong, and if you're going good, we'll let you go. But let's focus on getting through a few before you're thinking about like a 7 inning outing. Just because it feels like he's getting a little tired, is all.
Literally, so they're putting Taiwan back in the rotation. I got to be honest, man.
I do think they're dragging him around a little bit.
I think, yeah, I think Taiwan as the starter is as a starting pitcher is definitely better than Taiwan as a reliever. And I'm going to tell you why. I feel like it's a lot of these people think it's just easy to take a starting pitcher, throw him in the bullpen, and it's going to like help them. Like, here's the thing with Taiwan, though, Michael. Like, when he came out a couple weeks ago against the Mets, gave up 2 solo shots. Here's
Mm-hmm.
the thing. Here's the difference when you're a starter versus a reliever. When you're a starter, you give up 2 solo shots to start the game. You settle in, you pitch like 5 innings, and maybe give like 3 earned runs on like 6 hits. whatever. You did your job. You had, those 2 home runs looking back aren't that bad. When you're a
No,
reliever and you come in and give up 2 home runs and then you
it's
pitch 1 inning,
horrible.
you suck. Like that's
Yeah,
the
no,
difference. There's no way for you to work your way back out of it. It's
yeah,
part of it's your talent and part of it's your mentality. And I
yeah.
think for a guy like
Yeah,
you mentioned, Taiwan, guy has been jerked around, right?
he has been getting jerked around. I do feel for him a little bit. I was so inspired in that Rays outing out of the bullpen where he threw like 3 perfect innings of like 7 strikeouts. I was like, oh my god, the
Yeah,
Taiwan the
because he was
reliever.
expected to throw a bunch of innings. That's the thing.
So I think that might be like I think they wanted to try him in like a 1 inning role, and it might not be his cup of tea. So where it aligns him is if he does make a postseason roster, he's like, that's your mop up guy. That's your all
He's the
right.
cinder guard.
They're getting banged around. Let's put in Taiwan to get us from the third to like the sixth and go from there. Um, but we'll see how he looks coming out of the rotation on Tuesday. Little whatever, but it's more than just the rotation because that is usually a pretty big positive for this team. Well, let's talk about the bullpen because Orion Kerkering has been really good since Jose Alvarado's suspension. He has like an ERA under 1. It's been really something to behold. I am, admittedly, just a tad worried about him because he is not striking out a lot of guys. Uh,
Yeah, it's because he only has 2 pitches.
right. He's got technically has 3 with the sinker, but the biggest reason why he's not striking guys out is his sweeper is not as good as it once was. The last 2 years, his sweeper has seen less horizontal and vertical break as the years have gone on. It's been just less of a pitch that's getting hitters to chase it. His chase rate is really low this year. His whiff rate is really low this year because think of it this way. When your sweeper has a ton of break on it, let's say to a right-handed hitter, where can you start that pitch like out of your hand? You can start it almost on the inner part of home plate because it's going to break off the plate outside because that's how much movement it has. And that's a hell of a pitch. But let's say it's not breaking as much and you still want to hit that same spot off the plate. You need to start it further away so hitters can see it starting further away and they're like, okay, that's going to break outside and they're taking it. And that's what's happening here. No one's chasing his stuff and no one's really swinging and missing a ton. And even though he's getting good results because the average like guys are not hitting him hard at all, but for the role that he's being asked to do, which is that fireman role, like, oh, we have to pull Sanchez in the 7th because he gave up a 1-out double and it's like, all right, it's time for him to come out. I don't know if I want a reliever to come in who's not going to strike guys out a ton. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I want a guy that is pretty usually at risk of a bloop single and then a run's going to score because of it. Listen, throughout this great stretch of pitching from him, we've seen that happen where he's allowed some of those inherited runners to score because he's giving up little bloop singles
Yeah, but
that
Michael,
aren't
I
hit
gotta be
very
honest.
hard.
I understand. I know what you're saying. I do. I think it's a little unfair though when you're like, oh, but the bloop single. You just showed me this stat, like the Phillies with their like defensive runs saved is so bad. Like it's almost like
Well, that
saying
I think that's got to factor in too.
that's the
You have a
factor in
bad
it too.
defense.
And then
Yeah,
I think too, like let's say you like listen, the Phillies do have to go out. They need to get, I think, 2 guys for their bullpen, one to replace Joe Ross. I think Joe Ross is just cooked. And then another guy to replace Alvarado when he's not allowed to pitch in the postseason.
yeah. They desperately need a strikeout guy. When
Like
the
they
teams,
need to add like another Tanner Banks type reliever, 6th, 7th inning guy, and then like a strikeout guy. Who the
yeah, because
strike maybe is the strikeout guy David Bednar? Maybe.
perhaps I think that's a pretty good fit.
That's probably the guy because the Pirates suck, and I don't think Bednar is going to cost you a whole lot.
Their best strikeout guy at the moment is Jordan Romano. and it's by like a pretty sizable margin. Out of 174 qualified relievers, they only have one in the top 50 of K rate, and it's Romano. And Kerkering's is just not good. And we're at a point with Kerkering that if he's not dotting his fastballs on the corners and perfectly placing them, it's just not going to be a good outing. Like it's just not. He's walking a lot of guys too, Kerkering, and again, it's all because that the sweeper's not as good. That no one's chasing it, no one's swinging, missing at it, so he's walking more guys. And although he's doing a really good job getting out of jams and getting those weak contacts, when he comes in with a trafficked inning, I don't want I don't want the ball in play. I want strikeouts. I don't want you know, that's what Jeff Hoffman was so good at getting strikeouts in those spots where he comes in with two runners on and an out, and he strikes out the first guy and then gets the fly out. And it's like, great, awesome. But it's Kerkering, gives up a little grounder, tough and field single. It's part of why Clay Holmes struggled so much for the Yankees out of the bullpen because he was a soft contact guy. So he'd come into a jam or he'd give up a couple base runners, and then here comes some bloop single that kills the game or an infield single that kills the game. But you look at Clay Holmes, who's been a pretty dang good starter for the Mets, because soft contact's a good thing for starters. It's not for a reliever, though. You want your relievers to be getting swings and misses and strikeouts, not weak balls in play, because it's just more of a risk, especially for a team like the Phillies that's so bad defensively.
Yeah,
That's why they need a strikeout guy like Bednar, there's we'll see how the Phillies go about this because of the way they've kind of handled.
I have a feeling before the deadline we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see something. I think we might see some changes. I think we're gonna see some changes, not massive changes, but I think of this core of the roster. I think a guy that does play every day is not going to be playing every day. Now, who that is, I don't know. Let's just address the elephant in there. Well, I want to talk positive for a little bit, and then I
Mhm.
want to address the big story because we wouldn't be doing our jobs as amateur journalists if we didn't talk about it, right? So, like Otto Kemp, I like Otto Kemp. I think he should play every day. I think he's doing a
Mhm.
very good job. I think he brings something that this team is kind of missing. I think, he's. I think the reason why a lot of people dislike this team is because a lot of these like fans feel when this team has like adversity, they just fold mentally completely. And if you know
Sure.
Otto Kemp and if you know his backstory to get to the major leagues, he's basically like
He's like
he's
a
like a
cockroach.
he's like a Philly guy. I would say that,
Yeah.
and to the effect of like no one like I don't know, man.
Not
Like
derogatory.
it's kind of crazy that he basically played at like low level college baseball because he kept getting injured so much that
Division two. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
right like everyone like went to college with a guy like an auto cap basically,
Hmm.
and then he goes to the Phillies as he was undrafted. Michael, you know how hard it is to be undrafted in Major League Baseball and like play Major League
I mean,
Baseball,
there's like 30 rounds, so it's hard to go undrafted. Period. Let alone go undrafted and actually make your way there. Like truly, especially on a good team, for Christ's sake. Like it's very impressive that he's where he's at the moment.
right?
Yeah, he's definitely a positive, and I think his abilities at the moment, while not smoking the ball as much as he was in the minors, it is going to make it could possibly take some playing time from who some regular starters have been. And like I'm not talking even about Kepler in like a platoon way because that's already kind of
I
happening.
love the comp you gave to him before the show.
Yeah, he's I can't take full credit for this. This is like a Jack Fritz ism a little bit where Otto Kemp is very similar to like a Cardinals type of player. You think about all those Cardinals teams from like the
Those Cardinals
2000s.
rats.
Yeah, Cardinals rats from the 2000s through the 2010s, and even up until recently with guys like Brendan Donovan and Tommy Edman. They just have guys that are annoying to play against. Guys that can play kind of all over the field, albeit maybe not amazing. Otto Kemp is pretty bad with the glove, but can play all around the field and is a tough out. Is a tough out and puts the ball in play and doesn't just put it in play, but puts it in play hard. Otto Kemp's going to have a decent at bat, and if you give him a fastball, he's going to square it up and hit it hard and pass the baton, all that sort of jargon and typical baseball jargon, it applies to Otto Kemp in a way where he's up with a couple guys on and 2 outs. Like I'm hoping and feeling pretty decent that he's going to hit something hard and play, and he might come through as a guy that it's when you first start playing the Cardinals in those games and you first start playing this Phillies team where you get to a guy like Otto Kemp and you're like, all right, this might be a break in the lineup from, the top of the order. We can get an out here. And then he breaks your back with some 2-run single and you're just like, oh, that was disgusting. Like that whole series against Atlanta was like that basically for him, like in Atlanta. So yeah, I'm enticed by him. I want him to stick around and be a useful player. And I think he's not the odd man out, but the guy that's struggling the most for sure is definitely Bryson Stott. And Otto Kemp, we could see if he could play second base for sure to see that maybe it starts as a platoon thing, but they already got Sosa doing that. So maybe against some righties, we'd rather be seeing Otto Kemp at second base with Kepler in left field as opposed to Stott in there. Might be something that's worth trying if Bryson's going to continue to struggle at the plate the way he has for almost the entire year.
Let's talk about, well, you were there yesterday, Michael. You might have saw it happened.
Dude, it was so frustrating.
So I'm not talking about Bohm, by the way. Because
Bohm's just
Bohm's been playing well, so we're not going to rip Bohm.
He's just Bohmer.
He's just going to do that, I guess. It's like when he's like, "Oh, he threw his bat." I'm like,
I will say this before we get into what you're going to talk about. One more baseball-related thing with this team. What the hell are we doing without having Schwarber behind Harper? Was that not the entire reason to move Kyle Schwarber out of the leadoff spot? Was to have him as protection for Bryce Harper, and I get it. Harper was hurt for a while. You want to do what you want to do with the lineup. Now that he's back, why are we like messing around with this? The entire point of removing him from the leadoff spot where Schwarber was so great at was to have him be behind Bryce Harper. So when Harper inevitably gets 4 pitches, not even close to the strike zone in an important spot, we have Schwarber waiting there instead of Alec Bohm. And like, no offense, but maybe all offense to Bohm. Like this was a whole issue that we had where 1, 2, 3 should be Turner, Harper, Schwarber, and it shouldn't even be thought about twice. And I know that Bryce likes to hit third because he can have more time to look at the pitch or whatever, but like enough's enough here. It actually cost you yesterday where you flip like Bryce was seeing more pitches to hit when Schwarber was hitting behind him. He just was, and now it's going to be back to what it's been since he got here, which is seeing the least amount of pitches in the strike zone out of anybody, and especially out of any stars. I need legitimate protection behind him, and we had it, and we still have it. We're just not doing it. Anyways, enough of that rant, but watching Bohm go down looking there, I was pretty confident that he wasn't going to come through, and it bothered me to not have, Schwarber back there. It just changes the whole complex.
Yeah, he's arguing balls and strikes on a pitch that was clearly in the zone.
Yeah,
like
it's not a good look.
Flip at the ump. It's sort of like a bend the knees, like, oh, I can't believe I took that pitch.
Yeah, you got to get the bat.
Like, I can't believe I did that.
Yep.
And listen, like, if we're like, Bohm's been like since his disastrous April. Like, I guess, like, with Bohm,
he's been himself.
You're gonna have to accept with Alec Bohm. He's gonna have a month where he literally could not hit anything.
He's gonna have a terrible month. He's gonna have a really, really good month, and then it's just gonna be what he is, which is like a lot of singles, a handful of doubles, maybe a homer or 2, and hitting the ball hard on the ground a lot. It's just what he is.
I want to talk about I guess is he the most controversial Philadelphia athlete right now? He's definitely like the most like people either
Currently,
love
yeah,
this guy or they hate this guy, and that,
yeah,
it's Nick Castellanos.
yeah.
Um, I'm a work, and and I'm going to say this being objective. I'm not going to be like the fans that are like, "LOL, he blows," and then his wife is going on Twitter cussing out the fans or his mom.
It's not good.
I gotta say this though. Here's the thing with Nick is like he's definitely like that baseball player that fans like, where he's really quirky with his personality. Like
He's an entertaining
he's
interview.
a
Like,
very entertaining interview. Here's the thing though, man, is him getting mad over people bringing up advanced stats that the Phillies use. By the way, this isn't like fans made these stats up. This is something that Preston Mattingly has access to, the Phillies
sure.
general manager, and he's a big analytics guy too. I think this is going to be his last year as a Philly, because I think the Phillies have maybe brought this up to him before about things he needs to improve on, and I don't think he likes hearing it.
Yeah, I mean, since the whole debacle, he's kind of what did he do? He
They've
asked
also
for
tried to trade him for 3 straight off seasons,
yeah, he asked for
and
like the
they're trying.
binder
Go,
of the
sorry, go ahead.
analytics and stuff. So like he's making an effort, I guess. It's just he's so bad in the outfield. And like you said, they have been trying to trade him for the last 3 off seasons. I do think it's a guy that maybe becomes a buyout candidate if, you know, there's better options to replace him come the whatever. I think the opportunity could present itself. Um, but like 2 balls yesterday were hit to right field that landed that an above average outfielder catches probably both of them. There was that bloop single that he had a horrible jump on, and then there was the line drive that hit over his head that he just got a bad read on. Like he took one step in, he took one step to the side, he took a step back, and then he started kind of running, and it went over, and it just barely was out of his reach. And it's like, dude, these are catchable balls that really you win the game if they get caught. You know what I'm saying? Like, Luzardo might not get bounced if you catch the one, and it's just it's super frustrating that he's just gonna keep doing this. And those are 2 plays that don't count as errors because he doesn't make errors, but they're catchable plays that he doesn't make, and it costs you. It actively costs you runs and ultimately games. And it doesn't matter how like solid his bat's been this year, because one, it's not living up to what he used to be before he got here. And until you get some like 850 OPS season from him, the offense is still going to feel a little underwhelming. He'll give you a 750 to 780 OPS year. And like that's ultimately an above average hitter. That's a solid hitter. But the fielding is so terrible that he's just always going to be a negative player. And I hope Rob isn't like totally scared to pull him late in games now, because it would be, I don't know, it'd be kind of a disservice just because he complained about it. Like I get it, but you're just not good out there, man. You're not. And
Well,
you
Rob
could be
Thompson,
just better.
Rob
Oh,
Thompson, to my knowledge, since he became the manager of the Phillies, has only benched 2 player. Only 2 times I think I've seen him bench a guy was Bohm in the playoffs because he threw a temper tantrum,
yeah.
and that's what AJ Pierzynski leaked was at the Phillies. Probably Dombrowski and Topper were
Hmm.
pissed at Bohm for his immaturity. I think
Hmm.
Bohm, up until yesterday, has probably been a lot more mature with how he's been conducting himself.
He seems like he's talking to his therapist a little bit better. He's saying like, not getting too high, not getting too low. Like his
Uh,
words.
yeah, and Casty, because Casty mouthed off to Topper,
Yeah. And
and
honestly, good for Tom. Like Thompson's been standing up for himself a little bit. which is good. He did it with Kepler too, so I'm giving him some credit there.
I thought I thought that was smart what he did with Kepler. Like when he was complaining about him not playing enough, he batted him fifth the next day. Sort of like, okay,
Gave him an opportunity, prove me
you think
wrong.
you're
But you know what?
you think you're playing great. Okay, I'm going to bat you fifth, and we're going to see how you're going to respond.
Yeah, and he stood up for himself too, saying, "Listen, if you're going in there saying your rhythm's going to be all screwed up from sitting a couple days, then it probably is. Like that's something you need to mentally get yourself ready for. Like it's what it is." But yeah, Castellanos, I don't know. Like he's going to be playing pretty much every day until the end of the season and into the playoffs. Like he's going to play every
It does
day.
feel frustrating. It does feel like though. Clearly, Dave Dombrowski, and then by extension, because he reports to him, Preston Mattingly, just
Hmm.
don't want Castellanos here. They don't want him here, and no modern baseball GM is going to look at his like advanced numbers with base running in the field and be like, "Oh, we'll take him." Like you said, he's a buyout candidate, and like this is a guy that since he's come here, he's played the most games. Michael, this is like if you're going to buy out a player, you've played every day because you don't think he's good enough to even be on your team anymore.
You need a replacement. Like you can't just do it,
Like,
out
that's
of
wild,
nowhere.
man. It's sort of like I
It
can't.
sucks, man. It's
It's
it's it's
wild.
really it's it's hard to like. I was talking about this with my friend Nick that we talked about. I know, like last year, maybe a couple years ago, that like a homegrown version of Tobias was like Alec Boehm, where it's like he's kind of good, but he struggles, and it's like maybe kind of the reason you're. But the real answer, the real Tobias Harris, is Nick Castellanos. Like those two contracts are so eerily similar, where it's less crippling than an NBA contract like Castellanos is. You're still able to kind of make moves around it, even though he does make up a lot of money. But it's a guy that you acquired as someone you thought could really push you over the edge. And Castellanos made the All Star team, which, whatever. But a guy that has certainly underperformed as he's gotten here. And as the playoffs roll around, just tend to kind of tank you. They're good enough in like 2023 in that Braves series where he was great in a very similar way that 2021 Tobias Harris was really good against the Wizards in the first round, where it's like ultimately it's like, okay, we're talking about the first round here. Like just don't be a zero in the second round and maybe we'll get over a hump. And they're zeros. You look at when Tobias's first year here in 2019, he shoots uh, 2 for 15 or whatever from three in game four with a chance to go up 3-1, which virtually locks down any series in the NBA. He was terrible that day. You look at Nick Castellanos when the Phillies went to the World Series. If you got any other version of Phillies Castellanos than what you got in 2022, you probably win the World Series. But he was such a zero player that every time he's going up there, he's hitting into an out.
Or double play.
And yeah, it's terrible. And you're sitting here in 2025 and it just feels like he's kind of getting worse every year a little bit.
I
And
think the attitude's a problem because to me, when a guy has an
well, you're
attitude,
starting to get the Tobias had a little
the
bit of an attitude
attitude, it's
too.
sort of like listen. And by the way, if the fan that he was mouthing off to,
That was in defense of Bryson. I did see.
oh, he was yelling about Bryson Stott.
Because a fan was coming down, and according to someone, a fan came down and started screaming at Stott for popping out to end the game, and he was defending him. So like I'm not going to get on Casty there.
No, not and that's not what I get. Like that's good. That's a good sign.
No, that's a good
To
teammate.
me,
Like that's
to
good.
me, I think it's sort of like, oh man, I'm trying to think of it like, man,
You
like
remember when he swung and missed?
Michael. I've been following the Phillies since I was like 6 or 7 years old. I've never seen the Phillies have a player on their roster for so long that they just like they signed him and they to a 5-year deal and then tried to trade him nonstop every offseason. And they're going to listen, Michael, they're trying to shop him at the deadline. Like they
God,
want.
it's what were we doing with Tobias every year? You know, it was
I think
chatter around
Tobias,
getting him
but
off the
Michael, I think
team.
Tobias in the NBA at that time, I think Tobias was a better player than Casty is. Like Casty's a negative WAR player. Like was like Tobias like a negative PER guy?
I mean, in the playoffs, yeah.
Well, look at what's the playoffs? I mean, like the regular season, man.
I get it. It's listen, a different nature of the
I think
sport,
that's a good
but
comp, but I think too, it's like the Sixers could have moved off Tobias Harris. It was Daryl Morey being a smug prick, where he's
well, they
like,
didn't. And then, listen, Tobias got a little attitude where he said, "What casual Sixer fans will trade me for a crumble cookie," and then he went and like listed off all the things he's good at. It's the same thing as like Castellanos' family saying, "This many games with no errors," like that sort of thing. So, what did we get from Tobias in the last year of his deal? Like the worst version of him. He was putrid in the regular season, and he was putrid in the playoffs. And God,
Casty.
I fear for what we're getting next year at a Castellanos.
Well, that's where I think, at some point, here's the difference though between the Phillies and the Sixers, and you know this to be true. I think John Middleton would not let that if they I
The
think
Sixers are just the Phillies are much better run. That's the whole organization.
correct. Where
Yeah.
I think the Phillies I mean, but here's the thing though, man, like negative WAR, like if you're trying to trade him to like because like 2/3 of baseball is just cheap. So like what? Like the Blue Jays. Like, hey, Toronto, we'll trade you Casty for a bag of for some poutine.
Mm-hmm.
We'll pay $10 million of his contract. They're gonna be like, well, no, like if he's negative WAR, then we could call somebody up to do what he does and pay him 20 times
Nothing.
less.
No, it's truly like if you
They're
want to
gonna
get him
buy
off
him
the
out.
team,
They might have they might just
you might have to buy
either
him out. You might have to, and if not, you'll have to attach prospects to him as a salary dump.
to like the White Sox
Or
because
it's like, and this will be the last thing we talk about the Phillies, or you use him to help match a little bit of salary in a trade with
the Angels for
the
Mike Trout.
Angels for Mike Trout.
Is that was
Where
that really we
essentially,
had the same thought?
yes, because I had this little conversation with Nick about Trout, where it's like that's mostly just going to be Middleton opening his checkbook. Like
That would be the pivot if they don't re-sign Kyle Schwarber.
they're not getting a lot of prospects for Trout at this point, but all you're asking Trout to be is essentially a corner outfield version of Reese Hoskins, where it's like hit me for power and walk a lot, and like I'll just take whatever else comes with it.
Mike Trout. I'm pulling up Mike Trout. 229.
Yeah, he's hitting like 230, but he's got power and he's walking a ton. It's Reese.
Well, I think I'm very curious as peripherals. Is he walk? I mean, because the Angels they're not good, right? So is he just they're not pitching to him because he's Mike Trout?
I mean, he's always had elite discipline, but like you look at his Savant page, it's pretty red with his walk rate in the 96th percentile and his chase rate in the 92nd percentile.
Well, that's the
He's
thing. It's
striking
like,
out a ton because he's still swinging and missing a lot.
well, yeah, because no one's pitching to him. So what's he
Yeah,
gonna just
so hit for
be
power and walk.
Be Joey Votto? I suppose he could be Joey. Yeah, like this clearly his Savant page. I got to pull it up here. It's like redder than a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that's concerning is maybe his squared up, and that's because he's just never seeing pitches that he can't square up.
You're not seeing a ton of strikes. So I mean, look at that launch angle sweet spot, 100th percentile.
I mean, he also looks like he just is just also getting really unlucky. Like realistically, Michael, at this point in Mike Trout's career, he should be a designated hitter.
Well,
Do I really need Mike Trout? Do I really
outfield.
need to see Mike Trout playing right field? Potentially pulling his hamstring, trying to get shag a fly ball. Do I need to see that?
As Bryce Harper protection, yes.
Well, shoot, man. Like this is, I mean,
listen, do it at the deadline, and all of a sudden,
Did you imagine if they actually execute that? Like,
Warber, Turner, Harper, Trout.
listen, I'm not. My concerns with Mike Trout is not his baseball ability. That is not the concern. We know what the concern
You
is.
think they would drug test Mike Trout, like the league?
What do you mean drug test him?
Like,
Why?
what if you gave him something to like keep him healthy? You know,
What, like human
maybe
growth
maybe a
hormone?
steroid, something, just something light where it's like the league would never, like the league's never gonna test Otani for PEDs. You know what I'm saying? They will never. Not that he's on them, but I don't even think they want to know. It's like ignorance is bliss with him.
I
You
think
got to
Trout's
feel the
kind of
same way
fallen.
with
I
Trout.
think Trout's kind of fallen out of the star status a little bit because of the. I mean,
Oh, so those just
He's not like Griffey. Like Griffey, they would never pop Griffey for
I don't
what
think
he's.
they'd ever. I think Trout and Griffey are actually, unfortunately, very similar. Griffey just probably had even more healthy seasons, despite also being as injured as he was.
Griffey also played on better teams than
Yeah,
Trout
and
had.
like the COVID season, like Trout got some hosed with some lockouts and stuff too. Like Trout got
True.
hosed for sure. But
Um.
besides
Yeah.
all this, all right,
All right. I
football
guess
time.
football time.
So
So we've seen a trade which I saw an anonymous GM describe as two general managers rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic, Michael. So that's I could not think of a better way to describe this trade.
wow. So Jesus Christ. Okay. Uh, so the official big trade that we are referring to, as when we talk about football, we are going to be talking about each division, and we're going to start with the um, AFC East, and we're going to talk about the Dolphins as a trade has gone down where Jalen Ramsey has been sent from the Miami Dolphins to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and what has come back. Well, Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, and a seventh for Minka Fitzpatrick and a fifth. Now, I do think Minka at this point is the better player. His PFF grades are pretty nasty to him. I do think he's a lot better than what PFF gives him for. Like, he's the he's the perfect example of like how PFF can struggle. And yeah, so point being is that for the Dolphins, I feel like this doesn't do much of anything. Like you said, rearranging a chair of the Titanic. The Dolphins, for me, can like quietly finish fourth place in this division. Like I think that's not pretty. I don't think that's
Well,
far fetched.
so it wasn't the big. I thought the big thing about this trade was it was like the Dolphins had two disgruntled players in Jonnu Smith. Well, Jalen Ramsey was disgruntled because he didn't want to be in Miami. Because listen, he's at the stage of his career where he should be signing 1 or 2 year contracts with contending teams
Yeah,
and then, chasing another ring, right? Like
basically.
either like go back to the Rams or go sign with the Cowboys or the
The
Bills or the
Ravens,
Ravens or the Chiefs.
sure,
Why not Kansas City, right?
right.
They were getting the Eagles. Last I recall, Devontae Smith was torching Watkins in the Super Bowl pretty
Yeah,
heavily.
yeah.
Yeah, dagger. So yeah, like he should be. I could see him being like, "Cut me, just cut me, and let me. I'll sign with another team." Right?
Right.
Dolphins didn't want to do that. They wanted some compensation for him. Right? So
Dude, Minka is a pretty nice compensation package. I'll definitely.
so here's the thing though. The other thing is they trade Jonnu Smith. Now look, in that Shanahan offense, that McDaniel runs a Shanahan offense, Michael. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's his variation of it. You
Yeah.
need a tight end. That whole scheme, when it's good, that's high production from the tight end. It needs the tight end to produce in the passing game, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Dolphins don't have a tight end now. They picked up Darren Waller, who retired because he wanted to pursue a music career, and he said, "quote I didn't want to run block anymore on the Giants." Put yourself.
What a better.
If that was the Eagles, would you be inspired by that? Would you be
No,
excited about
no.
that?
No, I never. No. So
And even worse, you knew you wanted to get rid of Johnu Smith from a while now. Why'd you
yeah,
reach for Kenneth Grant in the draft when you passed on Tyler Warren?
a lot of just like a lot of reasons.
This is brain rot. This is general manager brain rot. And oh yeah, they picked up Minka Fitzpatrick, Mike. Michael, they let go of Javon Holland, who is younger, cheaper, and better than Minka Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Dolphins and what they've become over the years, where it really was like this super intriguing, high explosive offense that just needs a healthy two a season that maybe can put it together. And, they ended up just keep losing big games, losing cold weather games, losing games late in the season all the time. And it's devolved into like the softest team in the league by a pretty wide margin. Like they have no toughness to them, they have no backbone, they have no fight, they have no resiliency. It is just constantly getting bowled over. Like it's a team that they like to run the ball, but in like that zone spread run, like to the outside, all those sort of things. And when it gets tight and they got to kind of run through teams, they have no ability to do that. And then defensively, it goes the same way. They just kind of get rolled over and bowled over. You mix that with some head case issues on some of the players that they have, Tyreek Hill, and it doesn't bode well. It really does not bode well for success at all. And it seems like they never had a championship window, but they had like a contending window, I guess, that they totally missed. They
So,
missed
so
their window.
earlier today, Sleeper NFL, the fantasy site Sleeper, tweeted out in honor of Joey Chestnut's 70 hot dogs. Here's highlights from the Dolphins' 70-point game against the Broncos, and I commented on it. I'm like, I feel like after this game, both of these franchises have gone in complete opposite directions.
Totally, they have.
The Denver
Absolutely.
Broncos are a sleeper team in the AFC, like to win like 11, 12 games, right? That's
Yeah,
not a crazy. That's not a crazy expectation for the Broncos,
absolutely not.
right?
Absolutely not.
And you just brought up the fact that the Dolphins could finish lower than the New York Jets this year.
They really can, man. Like I'm so out on Tua. I think
Which I
everybody.
think is a great segue into what we're going to do to preview the NFL for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, we've already started. Honestly, we've ripped on the Dolphins far enough. I think they can finish last, and I think that's pretty much it. Like I think Mike McDaniel. I think Mike McDaniel needs to be a coordinator under a culture guy. Like, you know, I think Detroit was a pretty enticing opening for a guy like him. I think I don't want to say here because I don't need him to learn anything under here, but it's like I think
I don't think
Mike
him
Mc,
or Jalen Hurts would get along because Jalen Hurts wants to be coached hard, and I kind of get the vibe where he's gonna like want to high five Jalen after like a touchdown, and Jalen's just gonna give him like the death stare,
no,
like
exactly. Mike
like
McDaniel
dude, like
needs
what are you doing?
Mike McDaniel. I think is a very good offensive mind, and I think
He's gonna go back to San Francisco.
he's got a good culture in terms of like the players like him, and that's a very important thing to have. But I think he just needs to be he needs to elicit a tougher culture. So whether that means he's a head coach and he hires like some hard ass coordinators to kind of get on players or what, I just think he'd be better suited maybe taking a year or two as an OC somewhere that like San Francisco is just not that is not the place to learn how to get tougher. Like that is Kyle Shanahan is not the coach to learn that from. Not
I mean,
even
yeah,
1%.
when your mentor is
Maybe the Rams. Like maybe go learn
why
from McVay a little bit. McVay has a much better culture than what the Niners cultivated and what the Dolphins have cultivated. And it's not even close. Like the Rams, those guys show up to play. They have some nastiness to them. Like totally they
you know
do.
who McDaniel kind of reminds me of his coaching style with his players is like he's kind of Pete Carroll-ish, very rah rah, like player
Well, it's not,
first.
but I don't think it's rah rah. Like I think it's player friendly, but I think he's too chill. I think he lacks energy. Like Pete Carroll, he's 75, but everyone says he acts like a 30-year-old. Mike McDaniel is like 30 that acts like a sophomore in college, where he's just like chilled, laid back dude. Like, I'm hanging out
Ripping his
and we're
vape on
winning
the
games,
sideline.
baby. Exactly. Like, exactly. So I think, honestly he could learn. That might be the freaking answer, John. He needs to go to Vegas and learn some stuff under Pete Carroll. My God, we figured it out. That's where he needs to go be an OC with the Las Vegas Raiders while
Ashton
Pete
Jennings,
Carroll
2,000
retires.
yard season. Can I bet Ashton Jennings to run for
Yeah,
2,000
dude,
yards in
exactly.
2026?
So, yeah. Anyways, the Dolphins, I think, need to burn
Actually,
it
that
all
would
to
be
the
the perfect
ground.
spot for him because Pete Carroll's like 75 years
That's
old.
what I'm saying. You can
Like,
you
he'll
can
be the next
learn,
head coach.
and then take over. Like it could be perfect. But no, they need to tear down everything they got going on in Miami and literally start from scratch, top to bottom. I wouldn't mind if I was the Dolphins getting everyone out. Like I wholesale change. But yeah, that's where
All
I'm
right,
at
so
with
we're
Miami.
previewing the AFC East, by the way.
Yeah,
We're preview. So, Michael, you let your thoughts be known about
yeah,
the Miami Dolphins, right?
yeah.
So, obviously, Dolphins let a bunch of guys go. They brought back Minka. I think the Dolphins are like it's weird, Michael, where I follow I go like they're ever since I started like looking up their team to research it for this segment we're doing. We're previewing each. We're going division by division in each conference per week. Is that like their press? They like defend everything Chris Greer does, and it's odd. I find it bizarre because like you have Jeff McClain, where it's like Howie Roseman has 5 unpaid parking tickets.
Yeah,
That piece of shit, Howie Roseman.
literally.
We're like because the Eagles don't give anything to the beat writers, right?
Sure.
Where it looks really obvious that Chris Greer tells all the beat writers in like the Miami papers everything what's going on because they're all really talking positively about a guy doing a bad job,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's why Daryl Morey never gets criticized by the media,
Hmm.
because he tells them everything.
Right.
The
Right.
moment you criticize him, he's going to cut that information off.
Right.
So you're like to me, I think I agree with you. I think they're going to finish in last. And like you look at Tua, like do you feel like with Tua though, with Tua Tagovailoa, that I don't know, like the whole like Dolphindom to me is like it's almost like a cult.
Like
Like
the
everyone
players.
knows how mid and mediocre they are, except for them.
Yeah, I mean, John, it all makes sense. Like it's the softness aspect of it. It's like if you're a soft team, you don't think you're
They
soft.
also never retain the players they draft. Christian
No,
Wilkins left to the Raiders. Javon Holland left to go to the Giants.
they're very, very poorly run.
Like I
It's
would not
no,
be Michael. I would not be shocked if the big trade deadline trade we see this year is going to be Tyreek Hill to like the Bills or
Kansas
something.
City Chiefs.
I don't know if Kansas City even needs Tyreek Hill if Worthy and Rice are both healthy.
I mean, regardless of that, like doesn't matter. But yeah, well, the Dolphins are just not an envious spot. Like they have enough talent, I guess, where I do think
Their
they
O
could
line is
still win.
horrific.
Yeah, they have enough talent that they can still win like 8, 9 games if all things kind of go well. But like every other Dolphins season goes, they'll probably start like through 6 games, like 3-3, maybe even 4-2, and then they're just gonna slowly dissipate, and you're gonna check their standings, and they're gonna be like, you know, they're gonna be 6-6, and then they're gonna finish 7-10, 6-6,
Real quick, I want to bring up Minka Fitzpatrick. You mentioned like PFF
Mhm.
shading him. He played the Steel at 20 in the last 2 seasons was with Pittsburgh. He's only forced 2 turnovers.
Yeah, we're like that was such a big appeal for him of how much of a turnover machine he's
Yeah,
been.
but what was our knock on? People were knocking CJGJ this past year, where he forced 6 turnovers, but he allowed 9 touchdowns. Right, that was like people knocking him. Right, that's
Mhm.
why he was graded low on PFF. Which you could argue, is that really fair to blame him?
There's a couple plays that Minka gets charted for a touchdown allowed when it's like he's just happens to be the nearest defender, but it's because
Right.
of Joey Porter Jr. like totally blew a coverage.
Or
Like,
like, yeah, Joey Porter Jr.'s been like literally mugging people, getting penalized, and
yeah,
then is that his fault? Probably not.
sure.
But at the same time, though, bro, like I do feel like that turnover stat, that's kind of a good indication when a safety's starting to decline. Because like Brian Dawkins, when he was here, like his stats didn't really like decline like all that much. Like you saw his
Yeah.
stats decline when turnovers near like when he was with the Broncos. You know,
Right. It's like when, if Minka Fitzpatrick is going to have a legitimate impact for that Dolphins defense, he needs to have like 5, 6 interceptions, like something ridiculous like that. And if he's
and like
not
and
going to
dude,
do it,
and dude, he's on the Steelers. Like it wasn't like he was on the
no, he was on a good defense. No,
like the
yeah,
Panthers.
no.
You know,
All right. Next team, I guess that we'll talk about. We talked about a little bit before. New York Jets. I think them and the Patriots have a pretty decent shot at finishing second or third. More so, just not because of anything good, really, just because of less bad. You know what I'm saying? The Jets defense has been pretty good for the last few years, and I think under Aaron Glenn is going to kind of continue to be good. I think Aaron Glenn is honestly maybe a good fit to kind of get some better culture vibes towards the Jets, but it is still the Jets, so you always have to be cautious. You're off of Rodgers, which is a pro, but you're on to Justin Fields, which is not a good thing. You never want to have Justin Fields as your starting quarterback again. Super talented guy, but continues to make the same mistakes that he made 6 years ago in college. Those same mistakes are pretty common throughout his dropbacks and reading of defenses, and it's why he is failing to stick and why I don't think this will work out with the Jets at all. You know, it just Garrett Wilson looks like he kind of gets worse, but
yes.
at the same
Here's the
time, it's a
thing.
lot of
Here's
things
the thing,
suck.
though. For I think with Fields, though, this is the best O line he's played behind in his NFL career.
Okay,
As wild as that sounds, because it's the Jets.
yeah.
This is the most weapons he's had. I mean, Brees Hall is a top 10 running back. Garrett Wilson,
Hmm.
I think, is a top 10 wide receiver.
Sure.
Um, I think the whole Aaron Rodgers, like bringing in his buddies and then not really focusing on the homegrown guys as much,
Hmm.
because, for whatever reason, they didn't vibe with Aaron Rodgers,
Dude,
I don't think,
is that shocking?
I mean, well, God, Michael, what a foreign concept. Get your best players the football.
Well, I mean, Rogers is just, anyways. Um, I'm not high on the Jets by any means. I just think I'm so low on the Dolphins. Like,
Well, no, I think the Dolphins are like a 6-win team. I think the Jets are also a 6 to 7 win team. But the thing with the Jets, though, is I like Aaron Glenn and
mhm,
Michael. I do find it like for when you like talking to Jets fans, the thing they always bitch about is whenever a generational quarterback is able to be drafted, like idiots, we always stupidly win 9, 10 games and then fool ourselves into thinking that we're good. And we take ourselves out of the opportunity to draft that quarterback.
so with Arch Manning looming, you're saying the Jets
They're gonna win like 8 games,
win
and
eight
they're gonna
games.
they're gonna win like 8 games, is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Potentially 7. I'm gonna say 7 games.
yeah. I'm right there with you. Which then takes us to New England with the Patriots. And listen, I'm very high on Drake May. I do think that that offense still has ways to go. I think they're getting a little too favored, I'd say. Like you look at like some odds on make the playoffs, miss the playoffs. They are only like minus 160 to miss the playoffs, and that just feels pretty crazy to me. Like I get it. I think Mike Vrabel is a very good coach, and I think that's a good vibe
Well,
shift.
I think it's the last place the favorable schedule.
Now, there's factors, and year two of Drake May, the whole thing, but like you address the offensive line a little bit with the draft, but it's hard to replenish an entire offensive line in an off season or fix it up. And I don't think their offensive line is still good. I don't think their weapons are really that enticing. And I think that holds back your offense a lot. That even if Vrabel gets cooking with a really good culture and even a pretty good defense, I don't think it's going to be enough to win more than like 8 games.
I
You know,
agree with you. I because
and
that's
that's and that's if everything goes right.
that's the thing, because that you have like a two-headed monster at running back, I suppose, with Travion Henderson and
And
Ramondre
Ramondre
Stevenson. I
Stevenson,
think
yeah,
Henderson was like the more intriguing of the two Ohio State running backs. Judkins is more of the traditional back.
yeah,
Henderson was like the Alvin Kamara, multi-use running back,
receiving, yeah.
receiving back, which I think teams now are putting a lot of emphasis on. I mean, I don't know, man. They do feel like Dolphins. They feel like Diet Lions or like Lion Zero. Like this isn't gonna be like an overnight fix job. Like I think people want them to be like the 2023 Texans, but
Mm-mm.
I don't think
The
that's
Texans had a much better roster,
foundation.
and
Yes.
granted, I guess maybe the offensive line, but it's like in
Well,
terms
they
of them
signed all
being.
these guys that other teams cut. Like Harold Landry got cut by the Titans. He got cut by the worst team in
Yeah,
the
I
NFL.
think New England is doing a little stopgap with the O line, which I think is important. Like honestly, what do we talk about? What's the most important thing for the Patriots last year and then this year is the development of Drake May. That's the most important thing. Like you develop Drake May, the wins will start coming, and the best way to develop him is to ensure that he's upright and not taking a beating and getting a competent
Yeah, this isn't
enough
like the
offensive line.
2017 Eagles where like they had a good foundation in 2016 and these added pieces.
No, you're starting from
This
rubble
was legitimately probably the worst team in the NFL last year that got hot at two unnecessary games that prevented them from
from
having
getting a
the first
top pick.
overall
Yeah.
pick.
Yeah, and you look at even like the receiving room, there's no Nico Collins in there, there's no Tank Dell in there. Like you have Stefan Diggs, who's nice, but it can only, he's got his own issues for sure, and he's coming
Yeah,
off the ACL injury. Like I don't know, like it's
well, dude, like there's a
concerning.
video of him holding a bag of I don't know cocaine came in pink. People were saying it was cocaine, but I don't
It's
know,
some sort of
drug that
drug,
he
yeah, on a
probably
boat
would
with like
fail a test
Instagram
for.
models.
Right.
Yeah, so do I think he can be a good player again? Sure. I think aside from his off the field stuff, like he's coming off a torn ACL. Like I think
And he's like
that's
42 years old.
that's just always cause for concern. So
You know how long he's been in the NFL? He caught that. He was like a second or third year player when he caught that touchdown pass against the Saints in the playoffs in
yeah, the
2017.
Minneapolis Miracle was his you know I
Bro,
think
that was
third
almost like
year.
10 years ago.
I don't, next year is 10 years since
That's
next
my
year is
point.
10 years since LeBron came back against the Warriors in the finals.
Yeah, like that's my point. Like he's
Pretty
old.
despicable.
And like I
Yeah.
don't know, like I
So
like Pop Douglas. We'll shout out Pop Douglas. I think the Jalen Polk and the Javon Baker picks aren't looking too hot, and that Kyle Williams they took in the fourth round, like could actually leapfrog the both of them, which is I don't know, like
we'll be seeing. But that leaves us with the best team in this division by far, best quarterback. Um, you know, they've been running it for a while. The Buffalo Bills. Uh, Will they finally ever get over the hump? Will they ever beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? We may never know. The answer may just be a hard no. But they're gonna try again this
Like a
year.
Tootsie Pop.
They're going
The
to
world will never
like
know.
they're gonna win the division. They're gonna be the best team in that division, barring injury, of course. Um, I, it's the same story every year. They make improvements that feel marginal. Um, like they either get marginally better or marginally worse. There's no real massive strides, I think, either way with Buffalo. They never land the top receiver, post Diggs. They never add like crazy superstardom defensively. Like if I was Buffalo, I would have offered whatever the hell the Browns were asking for Myles Garrett. Like, how could you not do that with a straight face? Like, if they were asking for 2 firsts and 2 seconds, how can you, as the Buffalo Bills, not be like, you know what? Yes, absolutely, and we're going to extend them. Instead, you just let them stay there. I think that there's missed opportunities to get legitimate star power on either side of the
The
ball
Bills,
to
so the
really take
Buffalo
over.
Bills legitimately ran back the exact same team they had the year before, with the exceptions of letting Von Miller go, who they're probably
Hmm.
going to re-sign in like a month, realistically,
Potentially, yeah.
potentially, and Amari Cooper, who like, here's the thing, man, is I always joked about with my buddy Zach, friend of the show. The Buffalo Bills have 7 number 3 wide receivers on their team.
Yeah.
They have 7 number 3 wide receivers. And if we're going to ask why the Bills can never get past the Chiefs, it's because they lack a playmaker in the passing game to help Josh Allen like get over the hump. Josh Allen is the modern day John Elway, where John Elway was in the 80s, where he didn't really have a whole lot of help like he did at the end of his career. And he kind of had to do it all himself, right?
Hmm.
And, you know, Allen is one of those quarterbacks when people were like, oh, if Josh Allen was on the Eagles, like, oh, if John Elway played on the 80s Niners, he would have won all those Super Bowls. Well, he's not. So, you know, like at some point, don't you look at what's going on with the Bills and you're a Bills fan and you're being like, Josh Allen has been on our team for God knows how long, and the only time we've gotten a number 1 receiver was that nut job Stephon Diggs.
Listen, Stephon Diggs was massive for the development of Josh Allen. Like, I don't think he is what he is today without Stephon Diggs. It's
But
very
the
similar
closest
to
he's ever
Jalen.
gotten to the Super Bowl was when he had Diggs.
I know it
Michael,
was
Michael,
a
they should
great
have beaten the Chiefs in Arrowhead. They blew a lead in like 17 seconds.
13.
I'm
I
sorry,
know. Listen, I'll
14
correct you
seconds.
because
Oh,
it's that
my bad.
egregious.
I'm
I
sorry.
know it's true, man. It's disgusting, dude. If it was 17, they might have scored a touchdown in regulation. Christ, but like, I don't know
Let's
when
be
they're ever going to get
realistic.
over the hump.
They will, Michael. This is my bold proclamation. They will never get past Kansas City as long as Sean McDipshit is the head coach.
Yeah, I'm really curious on what it would take for them to pull that trigger. Like, are they are they ever going to do it? Like, is it going to take them to be a bad year? Like, we compare to ourselves all the time because it's what we know best. But like the Andy Eagles, never got over the hump, only made it there once, and came up short 4 times to even get there. He didn't get canned until things got like ugly, where it was
Off
like, all
the
right, the
rails.
Eagles suck. Like the Eagles are bad. They're a bad team right now. It's time for a new we gotta move on. Are they really gonna wait until they suck? And it's like, again, they're not gonna suck as long as Josh Allen's playing there. And I don't think he's like married to Buffalo. He's not having feuds with players there. Like he's not having to deal with the media trashing him. Like it's not like what Donovan dealt with, all that sort of stuff. So he's not going anywhere. So are they really going to sit on their hands and wait until they win like
We're
7
going to talk
games and
about
miss the
we're
playoffs?
going to
Like,
talk about 10, 15 years from now did Sean McDermott how many years of Josh Allen's prime did the Bills waste with Sean McDermott?
Yeah, and listen, I don't think Sean McDermott's a bad coach by any means, but I don't think he's a great coach, and I think that their roster that they construct misses a little bit of star power to bail things out. Like, even as good as Diggs was, he was definitely better earlier, those first few years. Because if we remember, not last year, but the previous year that they lost in the playoffs, dude, Stephon Diggs dropped that deep ball that Josh Allen dropped in the bucket against Kansas City. Like, it was a deep pass flown down there and he dropped it. And it's like, it got to a point where he wasn't coming through enough. And that's honestly part of why they moved on from him. If I were the Bills, like, I would have done everything I could to try to trade for Myles Garrett, to trade for like T. Higgins, to get you need someone to help bail out Josh Allen. Not that Josh Allen needs the bailing out, but it's like, where's the guy that Josh Allen can consistently look to when he needs it? I like Khalil Shakir a lot, and I think he's a very effective player. You say 7 number threes, I'll give him a number 2 blessing. I think that, though, they need someone where it's like, we know they don't run the ball. We know they're not like they run the ball a lot, but it's not the same way because they'll run the ball a lot with him. Where in a gotta have it situation, the Bills are honestly like, we're gonna run a pass play and hopefully someone's open, but if not, our bailout is Josh Allen just gonna barrel over somebody and pick up the first down. When the Eagles need to throw the ball and pick something up, it's like, we know they're looking at AJ Brown, Devonta Smith as like option. They have options. Even Dallas Goedert, they have options to bail it out. Bengals need something. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they have options. All these years in Kansas City, Travis Kelsey, that was their guy where it's like, everyone in the world knows where the ball's going, and you're not going to be able to stop it. Josh Allen, it's like, okay, here's a big spot. It's not it's not like the Eagles where it's like, ooh, we don't know where they're going because it could be AJ Brown, it could be Devonta Smith, it could be Goddard, maybe it's even Saquon, where that's all terrifying. But when it's the Bills, it's like, it could be Khalil Shakir, it could be Dalton Kincaid, it could be Dawson Knox, it could be
James
like
Cook out of the
James
backfield,
Cook out of the backfield, it could be
Ray Davis.
Keon Coleman. Like, it's nothing that's that scary. It's more so like, you know what I'm really scared for? I'm scared for Josh Allen just keeping it and running. That's what I'm scared for. Cover up and
I
hopefully
think what's
Josh
gonna.
Allen
I think
trips
I
and
wouldn't be
falls.
surprised, Michael, if one of these days. I don't know. Maybe it's Miles Garrett because Miles Garrett every Halloween puts in his front yard gravestones of all the quarterbacks he's like sacked or something. One
Hmm.
of these days, Miles Garrett is gonna literally split Josh Allen in half, and then it's gonna be like we gotta stop relying on. Look at Cam. Look how fast Cam Newton fell off in his career.
Hmm. Hmm.
You mean to tell me Josh Allen at 35 years old is gonna be like carrying the ball 15 times a game?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No,
No.
and like Cam Newton should be the mold of like what not to do from the Bills' perspective. It's like, and it's frustrating, I think, because they had a taste of how good they were with Diggs, and they just kind of lowered their ceiling by actively not going and getting some legitimate number one great receiver. So
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know. I think
that's
you
the
just got to
thing.
build out that weaponry. You got to build out that offensive skill position room
Well, the
in
thing
order
is, you're
to get
devoting your
yourself there.
assets to it, but it's like late round assets where it's sort of like you need to. It's almost like as a GM, you need to like kind of gauge the risk reward where you're like, okay, Bengals call. They want a first. They want our
Mhm,
first for T Higgins.
mhm,
You know, oh, we're not going to do that because we got to pay T Higgins,
yeah.
and then we're going to draft Keon Coleman, who I don't know, Michael. He could be a player. He could not be a player. I don't know.
Could be, yeah.
But if you have a window and your window is to win now,
Mhm,
you kind of need to make moves to indicate that you want to win now.
yeah.
They don't want to do that. And listen, Josh Allen's going to play his whole career in Buffalo, I think.
Yeah.
At what point do you think about, like, consider the fact of, like, maybe the fact they just don't have, like, you would think that, like, OCs would be running to go there to coach Josh Allen, right?
I guess. Yeah.
Right? Like Joe Brady only
Joe
became
Brady's good. I think he's
Joe
good.
Brady's good, but
Yeah.
like, at what point do you just, like if they lose it, like I think if they play the Ravens in the playoffs, the Ravens beat them.
Granted, they didn't beat them this year, but turnovers and stuff. I like. I don't know. I think maybe we're
I think the
spoiled because
Ravens.
our team is
We'll
perfect.
talk about the Ravens too. I think the Ravens, they're always adding to their team to improve it, like the Eagles do, right?
Yeah.
They're always
No, they're
adding.
they're constant. They're on. They're always
They're
constantly
always
on.
adding. The Bills just don't do that.
No, they're pretty content with. It's what's I think so ridiculous is it's like
The Bills and the
they
Phillies
are.
are very similar when I
I
think of
I
it.
knew you were going to say this. I knew you were going to say this. I wanted to try to get ahead of it, but the difference between the Bills and the Phillies is that the Phillies, it's like they've done a lot. Like they have exercised a ton of resources to build the team that they have. It feels like the Bills haven't. That's I think like if you look at the Bills contracts, Josh Allen in total in I guess in average salary per year, Josh Allen makes the most. Then Deion Dawkins, who just signed an extension last year, Greg Rousseau, Spencer Brown, Christian Benford, Ed Oliver, Khalil Shakir at 13 million, Joey Bosa, Terrell Bernard, Taron Johnson, Dawson frickin' Knox. Jesus Christ. Dawson Knox makes 9.8 million a year. What in God's name are they doing?
Yeah, it's like the Phillies when they're
Josh
paying
Palmer,
like
9.6 million a year. I mean, this is the frickin' problem, John. What the
it's the
hell are they
same issue as
doing?
the Phillies. You look if we pulled the Phillies payroll up right now, and I told you some of the salaries, you know the salaries, you know what I'm talking
Oh, I
about. You're
know, but at least we see Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Zach Wheeler at the top
well, I'm
and
not
Kyle
saying it's bad.
Schwarber.
It's just sort of like they're like. Here's the thing. It's like
The Bills, it's like it's pretty not bad, but it's not great. Like Josh Allen's amazing. Deion Dawkins is very good.
I'm sure Dawson Knox is there because he probably plays golf with Josh
Greg
Allen.
Rousseau is good and Spencer Brown's good, but it's like these guys aren't.
They're overpaying the guys they drafted
Yes.
to keep them,
Yes.
and there's not like they've proven themselves all
To
well.
be like stars. And
Well, do you think
I
maybe the
think that's
reason they
the problem.
overpay them is because not many guys are exactly jumping at the gills to go play in Buffalo?
No, the guys they have there are guys
The
that
free
love
agents
Josh
want to go to
Allen.
the Dolphins and not go to
Yeah.
the Bills.
Listen, the Bills are going to be good again. They're going to win somewhere between like 12 and like 15 games like they do all the time. And it's just going to come down to them running into Kansas City, and they're going to hope that they get bounced before they have to face them. And that's simple as that. So, all right, that is our AFC East breakdown. We'll probably decide during the week, maybe even.
I think this is definitely like the least. This is the most chalk division in the AFC.
Yeah, and even if it's not even chalked, it's like we know who's winning it, and the other three teams are probably going to be bad. Like that's where we're at. So I don't
Right.
know. We'll go north. Maybe we'll go south. We're going to figure it out, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Phillies Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.